Belle's Book Reviews again, and today we are going to be reviewing Words on Fire by Jennifer A. Nielson. Before we start, I would like to say that if you haven't read this book yet, I highly recommend you go and read it before watching this review, because it is inevitable that I will spoil most of the story. And this book is not a book that you want spoiled for you. And this book is just overall a really amazing book. Anyway, so this book was recommended to me by a friend, and I am honestly so glad that it was actually recommended to me. Words on Fire, it is an amazing historical fiction about a 12-year-old girl named Audra. After everything she's ever known in her life, including her parents and her home, are taken away from her, which honestly I think would be a very traumatizing experience for a 12-year-old. Audra finds shelter at the house of a woman named Milda, who I never really understood Milda in the story, but Milda, she always kind of seemed out of place, because at first I actually thought that Milda was going to be one of those old nice grandmas, until I realized that Milda wasn't actually that old. So honestly, I think that Milda is a great character, and Audra, she finds shelter at Milda's place. Audra meets new friends throughout the book, such as Lucas, and learns that her parents were book smugglers. And I think that is the basic summary of the beginning, but I don't want to spoil the rest of the story this early in the video. And yes, I would recommend this book for ages 9 and older. This book does have a few violent scenes, but other than that, it is completely age appropriate for ages 9 and up. Just if you're younger than 9, I'm thinking that if you were younger than 9, then I think that this book would just kind of be a bit boring and a bit hard to understand for people who are younger than 9. There were a few things I liked about this book. I loved Lucas and Audra's relationship, because after I talked to my friend about this book, we both agreed that it was kind of obvious, even from the beginning, that Lucas and Audra would end up together, because they meet, and everything about them, it's literally the traits ever since the first time they met. It's always the same traits that happen in books. Whenever two characters are going to become a couple or anything, they show the exact same traits, literally anything trait that I can think of when it comes to that. So despite the fact that Lucas and Audra's relationship was quite obvious, I still liked it, because Lucas was just new to this job, and I kind of liked how he was just trying to show off to Audra when he hadn't even crossed the border at least 5 times. He had only crossed once when he was crossing with her. I also liked Milda and Audra's relationship, because I feel like Milda for a few years, because in the last few pages of the book, Audra does tell you that she did dedicate the rest of her life to printing books and filling orders and meeting new book smugglers. But during all that time, until she turns 23 or something, she never really gets to see her parents again, which must be heartbreaking. And I feel like Milda, she kind of played as the parent role in Audra's life, and I think that was honestly really sweet. How Milda, she just immediately accepted Audra as a book smuggler and was always just sticking up for Audra. And I also loved how in the end, the author actually ties up all the loose ends and doesn't just say, oh, figure this out on your own. Because I've read a few books where the author just kind of cuts it off at the end and just says, oh, now you imagine the rest of the story. And I asked them, why don't you just finish the story so that we know exactly what happens to them and don't dream up 1,000 scenarios every day? So honestly, I get kind of annoyed with books like that where the author just says, oh, you gotta figure this out on your own, use your imagination. And like, just like how it's kind of annoying whenever someone starts talking and they just randomly and suddenly stop talking and they're just like, oh, I forgot, never mind. Something like that. It's always really annoying. And I think that it's even more annoying when it comes to books. And I don't know if this is just me, but there is always that kind of satisfaction whenever I realize that I have finished a book and I know exactly what happens to the characters. And in other books, sometimes there are random questions that the author forgets to answer. In some books, the author, they rather say you figure it out, or sometimes they just leave random questions still hanging in the air. Like say there was this and that fight between someone and they never cleared it up. And the author doesn't tell you what happened between those two characters. So I was very glad that this was one of those books that actually cleared up everything in the end and kind of just wiped everything clean. And especially because in the end, Lucas brings Audra's parents back to her, because honestly I thought that there would be no more mention of Audra's parents and the book would end without telling us anything about them, and I was getting very, very, very anxious about that, but everything was okay. So I loved the fact that the author actually finished the story, and I also loved the mystery of Lucas and Rusakov being Lucas's father, because first off, let's be honest, no one expected that. And to be honest though, it did come out a bit later in the story, but I was just amazed because no one actually expected Lucas to actually have Russian blood when Lucas was going against the Russians. And the fact that Rusakov was chasing after Audra, I don't think that anybody picked up on the fact that Lucas had to hide whenever the soldiers were there. So I don't think that anybody actually picked up on those kinds of small things. But now, all the small things, they were never really drawing any questions. But at the same time, now the entire book, I just feel like it was all kind of evened out. So I did love how at the end Rusakov also changes sides and he tries to help Audra. So I was very, very glad about that. And another thing that I loved about this book was Ben and Audra's relationship, because first off, no one expected Ben to be Audra's grandfather. No one expected that. And like, I was just amazed because Ben, he doesn't really seem like the kind of person who would actually marry someone. Because like, we all know that Ben, after he failed during the uprising and just left all his friends to die, I understand how guilty he must have felt. And that I think that is a very reasonable explanation for why he's so distant to everyone. But the fact that he had kids and was Audra's grandfather was something that you could have never figured out. I don't know if anybody out there had figured it out before the book told us, but personally, I did not figure that out. And I just found it amazing how Ben, this entire time, I just thought that he just didn't want to feel the same pain from his other friends that he had left to die. I thought this entire time I'd been thinking that Ben just didn't want to feel that pain again. But honestly, the fact that he was Audra's grandfather, but the worst thing is that Ben died thinking that his uprising and everything he had ever done didn't matter. And honestly, I think that's the worst part. Because like Audra never got to go up to him and say, "I love you, Grandpa," or even call him by the name Grandpa or anything. And I just think that if Ben had lived, there could have been so much more that Audra and Ben could have done together. I think that they would have had a very close grandpa and granddaughter relationship, but it never got to happen. And I think that that was kind of sad in the book. And the last thing that I loved about this book that I want to point out is the mystery behind the black book. Because honestly, I don't know if other readers felt this way. Personally, I was infuriated when we learned that this package that Audra had worked so hard to deliver to Milda was actually this locked black book. Because don't get me wrong, I love books. But the fact that she went through all this trouble to deliver a book that was locked and that her parents didn't even give her the key, honestly, I just found it infuriating because it's a book. And if you have a book, you let people read it. That's the point of a book. You open the spine and you read the pages. But the fact that it's locked and her parents gave her this book but didn't give her the key, I was ridiculed about that. I was just infuriated. I was amazed and infuriated at the same time. And I honestly thought that this book was making fun of me at first. I thought that this book was trying to tease me with that. I don't know why, because books are non-living items, and I do know that books can't talk to you or tease you, but I did feel like the story was literally teasing me. Anyways, so overall, this book, I literally have nothing bad to say about it. This book was amazing, and I think that if you are a reader who kind of likes an adventure book with a lot of plot twists, I think that this book would be perfect for you. And overall, I'm giving this a 5 out of 5 stars because I literally cannot come up with a single flaw in the book. And I had a great time reading this book, and this was probably one of my favorite books that I've ever read. So yeah, overall, I'm giving this a 5 out of 5 stars. Thank you for watching, and remember to like and subscribe. Bye!